Have you ever imagined what it would be like to be in the audience of the Colosseum, surrounded by thousands of people, watching bloody fights between gladiators and wild animals? The sound of trumpets announcing the arrival of the emperor, the tension in the air and the fear of what could happen at any moment. But more than the brutal spectacle, the Colosseum hid mysteries that few dared to imagine. How were social classes separated? How did a spectator feel when he saw lives being taken away before his eyes? Now we will reveal all of this to you. Prepare to understand how pain, fear, and fascination mixed together in one of the greatest spectacles in history. And in the end, you will see that behind every scream and fight there was a much bigger story waiting to be told. Shall we? If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, seize the opportunity to be part of our community. Every interaction you make makes this space even more special. Imagine walking into the Colosseum, the largest amphitheater in the Roman Empire. The sound of trumpets and the crowds moving in the streets around the monument indicate that something big is about to happen. But before you step foot into the immense space of the arena, you have to overcome a first obstacle, the entrance. And to do that, you needed a ticket, then called a tessera. These tickets were not simple pieces of paper, like the ones we use today to go to the movies or a sporting event. Each tessera was a unique piece that reflected the social position of its owner. No matter how close you wanted to be to the action, your position in the audience depended on your social class, a clear and rigid division. This was not just a matter of privilege, but a reflection of the social structures of Rome, where status was the passport to the best seat. The Colosseum, with its impressive grandeur, had 80 numbered doors, and the layout was meticulously planned to ensure that the entrance was as orderly as possible. If you were part of the Roman elite, you would surely pass through one of the main gates, enjoying a privileged seat, possibly closer to the emperor and the arena, where gladiators fought for their lives. Imagine the pride of being on the front lines, watching the intense combat up close and experiencing the thrill of every victory and defeat. If you belonged to a lower class, however, access to the spectacle would be further away. Women and less fortunate citizens had to settle for seats in the highest stands, away from the main action but still participating in the spectacle in one way or another. The feeling of being there, witnessing the greatest events of the Roman Empire, must have been engaging, but the physical distance of the arena surely reflected social status, creating a sort of separation between those who watched as mere spectators and those closer, more directly involved in the decisions and battles that took place there. The Colosseum was not just a theater for spectacles, it also functioned as a reflection of Roman society, where different social classes were represented and segregated, but all with one thing in common: the desire to be there, to experience the grandeur of an event that symbolized the power of the empire. And this division was not limited to tickets and seats. The design of the arena itself took into account the social hierarchy. Imagine the emotion of being in the audience, surrounded by people of your gender, feeling the tension in the air as the show unfolded. But was this division between social classes also reflected in the behavior of the spectators? Could it be that, at a certain point, the upper classes looked down on those who were further away? And how did the lower classes, even from a distance, react to the power and authority of those closer to the arena? As the event unfolds, it becomes clear that the Colosseum, in addition to being a place of entertainment, was an arena of social affirmation. The Roman Empire expressed itself not only through its military or architectural victories, but also through its ability to organize events that affirmed its social order. But even with all the organization and hierarchy, such a spectacle, with an anxious and excited audience, could generate unexpected moments. What would happen if the empire and its rigid class rules met the chaos of the fighting crowd? These social and hierarchical tensions formed the backdrop to an event that, although it seemed like a physical fight, was also a symbolic fight between different spheres of Roman society. Who dominated the arena? The audience that filled the highest and most distant galleries, or those who sat in the privileged seats? And even more so, how did the organization and control of tickets create a sort of emotional and physical distance between the different participants? Before talking about the experience lived by the spectator, it is impossible not to think of those thousands of people gathered under the relentless sun of Rome, waiting for a clash to begin. Some closer, others further away, all united in some way by the experience of being part of the great history of the Colosseum. But what would have happened next when the show actually began? How would it change the way spectators see themselves and each other? Now imagine what comes next. The arena finally fills with life, and what seemed only a great gap between social classes begins to disappear as the show takes shape. The Colosseum, more than a physical space, becomes the stage where everyone, in one way or another, finds themselves involved not only in the fights, but in the culture, emotions and choices of the Roman Empire. But what really happened when the show began? What would the real experience be for those who watch the games, no matter where they are? Can you feel the anticipation in the air? How did the people feel, from their seats or from their more distant positions, when the doors of the Colosseum finally opened to reveal the fighting? How did these people react to the immense spectacle that was about to unfold? Follow us, because the spectator experience is about to be revealed, and the Colosseum will become more than just a place of entertainment. When you finally enter the Colosseum, the view is breathtaking. The immense Roman amphitheater, 50 meters high and capable of holding up to 80,000 spectators, is full of people, all waiting. The structure of the arena was designed to ensure everyone, regardless of their position, has a privileged view. The sloped stands and the elliptical arena are essential elements of this experience, creating an environment where no one feels too far from the center of the action. Imagine sitting among thousands of people, with the arena in front of you and the sound of the crowd echoing in your ears. Roman engineers were ahead of their time when they designed this space. The slope of the stands not only allowed for a better view of the fights, but also helped the acoustics, amplifying the sounds of the crowd's shouts and applause, creating a feeling of total immersion. Every movement, every cry of the gladiators, every sound of the clanging of steel was amplified, making the tension in the arena feel like a shiver down your spine. You could almost feel the heat of the fight and smell the sweat mixed with blood. What many may not know is that the Colosseum was designed to be a true masterpiece of entertainment engineering. Imagine an arena covered in sand, yes, the famous harina, which not only gave texture to the scene, but also had a practical purpose: to absorb the blood of the battles, preventing it from accumulating on the ground and further dirtying the sand, seen by the audience. This also helped keep the space clean and functional for the multiple events that took place in a single day. Furthermore, the Colosseum was not just an observation space. Innovation was in every detail, in the elevators and the moving sets. Yes, what appeared to be just a fighting arena hid, behind the scenes, a complex system of engineering. The mechanical equipment moved up and down to transform the arena into a different scenario for each new event. Gladiators, exotic animals, and even fighters appeared from different angles, as if they came from another world. The visual and emotional effect was so realistic that the audience certainly felt a real adrenaline rush, as if they were living the scene, not just watching it. Now imagine that, with every movement, the entire audience was drawn to the center of the show. But the Colosseum was not just what you saw with your eyes. Roman shows were made for all the senses. In addition to sight, hearing was a fundamental part of the experience. The roar of the crowd, the sound of swords clashing, The crash of the gates opening and often the sound of cries of despair. All this created an intense atmosphere. The Romans knew how to involve everyone in an epic spectacle, and it was not only the gladiators who aroused enthusiasm, it was the staging itself, with its innovations that transformed each event into a unique and unexpected event. Now imagine the audience moving, breathing together, reacting to each new entry into the arena. As the emperor made his triumphal entrance, the crowd erupted in applause, and you could feel, down to your bones, the respect and adoration he received. The Colosseum became more than a place of entertainment. It was a reflection of the order and power of the Roman Empire. Every battle, every duel was an expression of strength, courage, and often death. And the audience, at different levels, watched as if they were witnessing a game of lives and destinies. But what happened to those furthest from the arena? They were far from the action, but they couldn't help but feel the excitement and tension. Perhaps what struck them was the sound and vibration of the Colosseum. The clash of swords and the roar of the crowd echoed all the way up high, providing a unique experience even for those furthest from the fight. No matter where you were, one thing was certain. The Colosseum made you feel like you were somehow involved in it all. Every movement in the arena reverberated through the audience, and the psychological game between gladiators and the audience was no less dramatic. Even though the social classes had separate seats, everyone was somehow united by the experience. The division between spectators disappeared when everyone joined forces to support or condemn a gladiator. The Colosseum, with its design, created a sense of closeness between the audience and the spectacle. It was not just a place to watch, it was a place where you felt the fight in your bones, in your emotions. And when a gladiator fell, or when a battle reached its climax, the entire Colosseum breathed in the same rhythm. Shouts of jubilation or condemnation echoed through the marble corridors, until finally the arena calmed down. Have you ever imagined yourself in those places, hearing the clash of swords and the roar of the crowd, as history unfolded right before you? The anticipation grows even more when you consider the technical innovations that made the experience much more than just a show. Can you imagine the arena changing from one setting to another, like the stage of a great Greek drama? The Colosseum, with its magic and power, was about to reveal even more secrets to those who dared to stay until the end. Now brace yourselves, because what comes next is not just about the visual experience, but what happened when the curtain opened on the actual show. The games began, and everything became even more exciting. The most anticipated moment of all. The gates opened, and the games began. The anticipation was palpable among the crowd, eagerly awaiting the arrival of the emperor. In the background, the sound of trumpets echoed, announcing the entrance of the supreme leader. The audience erupted in applause, and the gladiators, armed and ready for combat, entered the arena with determined and courageous steps. Each one, with his concentrated gaze, is a vital piece of this spectacle that mixes honor, courage, and often brutality. The entrance of the emperor was a sacred rite. It was not only a demonstration of power, but a way to maintain order and the symbolic relationship between the sovereign and the people. During the ceremony, the emperor was not only the commander, but also the supreme judge of the life and death of the gladiators. When he arrived, all eyes turned towards him, waiting for his approval or condemnation. The tension in the arena increased with the simple gesture of the emperor. If he made a discreet movement with his thumb, the fate of a gladiator was sealed. What few know is that, in some cases, the gesture of the police verses, the famous thumbs down, did not necessarily mean the death of the loser. It was a sign of disapproval, but often the emperor could decide, at the request of the crowd, whether the gladiator deserved to live or die. Other times, the crowd made the decision on its own, shouting frantically, demanding execution or pardon. The Colosseum, in this sense, was not just a physical arena, but a stage where the fate of any man could be decided by a crowd thirsty for blood or pity. What many do not know is that gladiators were not just fighters. They were artists, trained to entertain and win the hearts of the public. The fights were not only brutal, but also strategic. Every blow, every movement was calculated to demonstrate skill, cunning, and endurance. Gladiators came from different origins. Some were prisoners of war, others were slaves, and there were still those who, of their own free will, chose this life to achieve fame and fortune. And behind every fight, there was meticulous preparation, a series of grueling training sessions which prepared the gladiators to face opponents of different styles. The fights, no matter how fierce, were a spectacle. It was like watching a deadly dance, where skill and physical strength intertwined in unpredictable ways. The audience, torn between supporting their favorites or waiting for the fight until their last breath, felt the weight of each blow as if it were a battle for their own survival. But the fights in the Colosseum were not limited to duels between gladiators. There was a variety of fighting styles that surprised the audience with each new event. Fights with different weapons, such as swords, spears, tridents, and nets, offered a wide range of possibilities. Each gladiator had his own style and specific skills, which could be shaped through a carefully planned strategy. Some gladiators wore heavy armor and fought with brute force, while others preferred agility and dexterity, attacking quickly and unpredictably. One of the most exciting battles was that between the retiari and the secutores. The retiarius, armed with a net and a trident, tried to capture his opponent, while the secutor, heavy and armed with a sword, tried to defeat his opponent with rapid attacks. These clashes, full of action and strategy, kept the audience in suspense, waiting for every move, every turn, every fatal attack. Apart from the gladiators, another attractive spectacle was the fights with wild animals. During the breaks between the duels, exotic beasts were released into the arena. Lions, tigers, elephants, and even bears were brought from distant lands to fight against gladiators or other animals. What made it all the more fascinating was the fact that in many cases, these battles were orchestrated to show the strength and dominion of the empire over nature. It was not just about killing an animal, but about showing the human ability to subdue even the largest and most feared predators on Earth. The Colosseum thus became the place where man faced his greatest adversities, not only in combat against other men, but also against wild nature. Each of these fights was not just a simple game of life and death. It was a demonstration of courage, virtue, and power. The audience reacted with enthusiasm to every movement, and the atmosphere in the Colosseum became more and more intense. The audience was immersed in the story being told, and each fight represented a new page turned. What the gladiators experienced in the arena was not only a fight for survival, but also a battle for honor and public recognition. Those who emerged victorious were venerated as heroes, while those who were defeated were left to the judgment of a crowd that, at times, could be merciless. And once the fights were over, the tension did not dissipate. The audience was still vibrating with the emotion of the spectacle, with the desire to see more, to feel more, to be closer to that uncontrollable energy. It wasn't just about what was happening in the arena, but about the connection between the gladiators, the animals, and the audience. It was an intense interaction, involving everyone until the last moment. As the interval approached, the Colosseum never ceased to amaze. What happened next would be a continuation of the intensity of the spectacle, but at the same time, something completely different and equally fascinating. What else did the Colosseum have to offer? The breaks in the Colosseum were a crucial part of the experience. When the fights ended, the arena was not empty, and the excitement did not diminish. On the contrary, It was during the breaks that the audience had the opportunity to witness another side of this great spectacle. Between fights, the Colosseum was transformed into a stage for various attractions, a true spectacle for the senses, and, to the surprise of many, the fights were not the only entertainment available. One of the most fascinating attractions was the hunting of wild animals. Imagine the scene: lions, tigers, elephants, and even bears released into the arena, facing hunters or gladiators in a fight for survival. These fights between men and animals were not only a form of entertainment, but also a demonstration of the power and control of the Roman Empire over the wild nature. The Colosseum thus became the stage where man demonstrated his superiority over the most primal forces of the earth. The audience applauded, their screams echoing off the stone walls, while the hunters tried to subdue the wild creatures with courage and cunning. The contrast between the brutality of the animals and the skill of the men made these intervals as exciting as the gladiatorial combats. These hunts were not isolated events, but part of a carefully planned program designed to impress the public and show the greatness of the Roman Empire. Some of these fights were so complex that, on some occasions, the beasts were released in groups, giving rise to an epic battle between man and beast, where survival depended on speed, skill, and strategy. And the most interesting thing? Many of these exotic creatures came from remote regions of the empire, such as North Africa and the eastern regions, which added an aura of mystery and adventure to these moments. The Colosseum, therefore, was not only a fighting arena, but a multifaceted entertainment center which fascinated the public with its variety of shows. However, the attractions of the Colosseum did not stop there. Another attraction that fascinated spectators were female combats, known as gladiators. Although less frequent than combats between men, these fights were equally brutal and impressive. The women who participated in these battles were trained to fight with the same ferocity and courage as the men. They wore specially adapted armor and fought with swords and spears, demonstrating that the Colosseum was not a place of gender discrimination. These female combats, although less documented, had the power to challenge the social conventions of the time and attracted an audience eager to witness this rare and fascinating phenomenon. As the day drew to a close and the arena prepared for the next cycle of events, the Colosseum was transformed once again. The end of the event was as important as its beginning. After hours of fighting and entertainment, the Colosseum needed to be restored for the next day of spectacles. And what seemed like just a break was, in reality, a ritual. Workers and slaves rushed to clean the arena, remove the bodies of the defeated gladiators, replace the blood-stained sand, and prepare the arena for the next day. This restoration process was as essential as the event itself, as it ensured that the Colosseum was always ready to welcome the crowds eager for more. But there was something even more curious about this process. Some historical accounts indicate that the arena, on certain days, was transformed for different types of combat. On some occasions it became a water stage where naval battles called naumachiae were staged. These battles, in which real ships were used, transformed the Colosseum into a temporary sea, with spectators watching from their seats, marveling at the grandeur of the scene. What is even more impressive is that these battles were not simply staged. The soldiers who took part in these water battles were often real sailors, trained in naval combat, which further increased the realism of the spectacle. When the Colosseum became a water arena, the visual impact and emotion of the battle was indescribable. But what happened after a day of intense action and emotion? As the last fights ended and the spectators began to disperse, the Colosseum became a place of reflection. The crowd left the arena, but the legacy of that day remained on the stone walls, embedded in the memories of all who witnessed those historic moments. The feeling of victory and defeat mingled in the air, and life went on, but always with the reminder that the next event would be even grander and more impactful. The Colosseum, with its majesty and violence, was not just a place of entertainment. It was a symbol of the power of the Roman Empire, where life and death were unbeatable. Now, imagine what would happen the next day. The Colosseum was always preparing for new games, new fights, and new shows. The cycle never stopped. The gladiators, the animals, the hunters, the beasts, all eagerly awaited what the future had in store for them. And in the meantime, the Colosseum remained a monument, not only to the greatness of the Roman Empire, but also to the complexity of human beings, to their struggle, to their courage, to their brutality, but also to their eternal search for fun and excitement. What's next, you ask? Maybe the next show will be even more surprising, more engaging, more epic. Who knows? In the pages of history, the Colosseum still has many mysteries to unravel. And you, what do you think of all this? Leave your opinion in the comments. Let's talk about what surprised you the most, or any other curiosity you want to share. I can't wait to hear what you think.